I appreciate people logging in, and we're going to be recording this so that we can share this. By the way, all of our webinars are posted on our website, healthwisefinancial.com. And you can, if you missed any of the webinars, you can go on there. If you want to tell other people about our webinars, they can go on in there and watch them at their leisure. So today's topic is of great importance and of interest to our office as well as our clients, and it's regarding cybersecurity, which we know is one of the huge risks that's out there in the marketplace and on the internet, etc. And so we want to address it full on. And I've got the head of LPL's cybersecurity team on the phone with us today on our webinar today. And I want to give you some background. We had this team do an audit of our office and look at our procedures, our systems, our IT services, and review everything that we're doing, because we want to be sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep our clients, you, safe. And we had a great report back from the teams. That was very good news. And then we'll be talking about what you can do to protect yourself, and of course what LPL is going to protect you as well. So with that, I'm excited to, first of all, let me just review. We've got everybody on our team here. We've got April Martinez, our executive assistant. Whenever you need to make appointments with us, please contact April. She keeps the calendar. Annie Nagavi, our financial advisor that helps me with all of our clients. And Sean Milligan, our director of investment operations and helping us with the portfolios and operations. So we're all here to serve you. And with that, let me introduce you to Timothy Marsh and Grayson Wellington here, both of them with LPL. Guys, I'm going to turn it over to you to lead us in this important subject matter of cybersecurity.
Great. Thank you, Loreen. Appreciate the warm welcome. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Awesome.
And I would just
Great.
ask
Well, my name...
everybody to put yourself on mute, whether you're on a phone call or with the webinar. If you can please put yourself on mute so we don't have any background noise. Thank you. Go ahead, Timothy.
Awesome. No, appreciate the warm welcome. My name is Tim Marsh. I lead our advisor cybersecurity team here at LPL. Been with LPL about 4 years now. Prior to that, I spent 2 years in cybersecurity at the spacesuit facility where the astronauts get into the spacesuits, which was a fun start to my career. And then I spent several years in the Black Hawk helicopter factory doing cybersecurity for the helicopters. Took a little bit of a turn and moved to Charlotte, and I've been at LPL ever since. And we've got Grayson on the line as well. Go ahead, Grayson.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. My name is Grayson Wellington. I've been with LPL Financial for about 3 years now at this point. And I've been in a lot of positions with the cybersecurity team here at LPL Financial. Currently, my focus is on advisor and client education. So just like we're doing today, that's kind of my specialty, is talking to the advisors and their clients.
Great. Awesome, Grayson. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and a little bit of a presentation. Can everyone see that okay? Great. I see some nodding heads here. So really, we really love doing these sessions and don't get to do them as frequently as we would like to. But we're here for you today. Right? So I think we have a relatively small, intimate group. Please feel free to jump in and interrupt. If you have a story, if you have a question, more than happy to stop and help out. We're just going to talk about what we do and what Loreen does to keep your information safe. And we'll talk a little bit about how to watch out for scammers, some of the tricks, especially with COVID and the census and some of the more recent events. And then finally, nothing to do with work, nothing to do with financial advice, but how to keep your family safe, some best tips for friends and family and in your personal life. So we'll start off in what I like to call the pyramid. And the clients are really at the top of the pyramid, right? It's your data, it's your information. You choose to do business with Loreen. Loreen chooses to do business with us. And we have an obligation to keep everyone safe. Sessions like this, teaching you best practices, how to not fall for scams always helps. And then there's what we do for Loreen and April and Annie and the whole team. They have routine training required by FINRA and the SEC, and also it's just a good thing to do. We love doing it. We have a strong relationship. Loreen mentioned our team came and audited. It was a virtual audit given the circumstances. And they passed with flying colors. The WealthWise team, we have 16,000 of these advisor offices, and Loreen was among the best. Very strong investment in technology, strong investment in cybersecurity, and they do a really great job making sure you're all safe. And then from an LPL Financial standpoint, we have about $40 million, 40, per year on cybersecurity. That includes 24/7 monitoring of all of your accounts, fraud alerts, a dedicated staff of about 110 people now. 3 o'clock in the morning Saturday, if something's fishy, they're going to find it. We also have a nice suite of cyber insurance for all the advisors and a brand new facility. It's nice. It has smoked glass, conference rooms, there's TVs all over the wall, monitoring things, again, 24/7 to keep everyone nice and safe. So let's talk a little bit about, there's cyber attacks we see in the news. Is it a person in a hoodie in their mom's basement, organized crime? You hear about insider threats or espionage or even terrorism and cyber warfare. And I'm happy to say we are not dealing with anyone yellow or over, right? There's North Korea, China, the Ukraine are not after Loreen's business, not after LPL as a whole. They're not after your information, frankly. Back when I was in the cyber world for Black Hawk helicopters, a little bit different, right? There's military, potential Department of Defense information, but LPL and WealthWise, your information, it's really this light green, the cyber crime. The criminals are after your information for a financial gain. They're going to try to steal your password to get money. They're going to try to steal your bank account information to get money. It's purely a financially driven business, which is frustrating. It's a little bit uneasy, but it's not necessarily the worst of the worst. But they're smart. They're well-funded. They know what they're doing, and oftentimes they do a pretty good job at it, unfortunately. And that's on us to try to help everyone stay safe. I'll pass it off to Grayson now to talk about the 4 most common threats that we're going to see, what these financially driven criminals are doing. Go ahead, Grayson.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And I want to preface this slide by first speaking that there's more than these 4 ways that we do see cyber criminals try to hack into accounts. However, given the expertise and the history that me and Tim have gone through, these are really the 4 main ways that impact clients on a day-to-day basis. So I'll be diving into each one a little bit further, but just from the start, it's phishing, which goes over email attacks. There's tech support scams, and there's client impersonation.
Grayson, I think you broke up a little bit. For phishing, top left.
Yep. So with phishing, there's pretty much 3 main categories that you want to look at here, and we'll go a little bit more into the next slide in just a second about some key red flags that you'll look at. But if they're suspicious and those dangerous links or attachments, they're also looking for those usernames and passwords, and they're also trying to spread that malicious software to your device. With tech support scams, these are those fake virus alerts, those pop-ups or those cold calls. They're often imitating large companies like Apple or Dell or Google, and they're trying to take over your control of your computer before you realize that you're giving all your information away. And then there's ransomware. So ransomware is when they threaten to take your information and require financial or money before giving your information data back. And then the last one is client impersonation, which hits the client world pretty heavy. It's when hackers take over the client's email inbox, and then they try to trick the financial advisor into giving up information. So the first one is phishing, and like I said, I'll go through a couple of red flags, but oftentimes in a very popular way that we see with phishing tactics is they tend to latch onto these big blue chip companies that we see here on the right-hand screen. So you may see a familiar logo such as Amazon, Netflix, FedEx, Starbucks. These big logos kind of draw your attention in, and they start doing some malicious intent to trick you into giving up your data information. Again, this happens in your email inbox. Is the most popular way, This does happen through phone calls and through text messages as well, but we do see email inboxes get hit the hardest. So in the body of the paragraphs or in the body of your email, these are some big red flags that you want to be on the lookout for when it comes to phishing scams. The first one is senders that you don't recognize. So it's coming from a very, usually an elongated name. It's coming from a .edu address or a .is. It's not really coming from, or it's not popularly coming from a .com or a .net or a .org. Another one is emails with generic greetings. So it often is hello, sir, hello, ma'am, hello, customer, because oftentimes they don't know your name, and they're sending this out to a lot of people in one setting. A big one that they also hit with is suspicious links or attachments. So those are those underlined blue links that you see kind of contained in the body of the email. And you also see those nasty attachments, which homes the ransomware or the tech support scans that you may see further down the road. They often request personal and private information. Again, they just don't know anything until they know it. So they're going to come after private information. It may seem kind of sneaky at first, but that's how they get the ammo that they can use later on. And then emails that create a sense of urgency. So you often see danger words like threat, emergency, must act now, requirement. These keywords get people to act instantly and really quickly because they know if you wait longer that you're going to come to your senses and you're going to realize that this is a nasty scam. And then it spoofs to legitimate websites. So you may see like Facebook.com is a popular website that gets spoofed a lot. They'll change up 1 or 2 characters in the actual URL at the top of the screen. So it may read as Facebook where the zeros are, or the O's are read as zeros, or there may be a 1 instead of an L. Just to slightly change it up, that will take you to the cyber criminal's website instead of the real authentic website. So we see this happen a lot where people fall for it and they don't know what to do. And there's essentially 3 steps that I want to talk to you today about how you can change your, how you can approach phishing emails if you do get phished. The first one is change your password immediately. And since this is in your email inbox, we encourage you to change it to your email account. If you do use that password anywhere else, we do know that individuals like to use passwords in multiple locations. We encourage you to change it in that location as well. Also, you want to alert important contacts. So if you're afraid that Loreen or her company may be impacted by this, it may just be important just to let them know, hey, I changed my account password, but I did get phished recently. And then be on the lookout for suspicious activity. So what I mean by this is make sure that there's no emails coming from that email inbox that from you. So oftentimes hackers with the account under the radar, and they're able to just start sending out emails pretending to be you and imitating you, and may not even realize it in the long run.
And if I may add, Loreen and some of her peers at LPL Financial, we have 100 million emails inbound every month, 86% of which are junk like this, right? They're malicious attacks. And you could extrapolate that to yourself too. So roughly 86% of the emails that are coming into your Google email, your Yahoo, are going to be malicious. And all those companies do a good job at blocking, but sometimes things can fall through, and then you're going to want to be very weary of the phishing emails.
So the next type of attack that I want to talk about today is ransomware. Ransomware we hit on a little bit earlier, but I'll go into depth here. So ransomware often goes hand in hand with those phishing emails that we just talked about. And it's often those nasty attachments or those nasty links that I spoke on earlier. So what happens is when you click on those nasty links or those attachments, it starts downloading a script in the background, a bunch of nasty code that's not familiar with your computer, that begins locking up your files. So any kind of family pictures that you have, any kind of financial files that you have, any kind of documents that you may have for work, all of that gets locked up and it becomes in the hands of the cyber criminal. And then the cyber criminal will then demand ransom, hence the term ransom and ransomware, of thousands of dollars, $10,000 in order to promise to unlock it. I use air quotes here on promise to unlock it because oftentimes they never unlock it without asking for more money. It's always just this never-ending feedback loop of just asking for more and more money. And again, these files can't be opened without a key, so it's a digital key, and they're going to keep asking for that money in order to unlock your files. So just like we do with phishing.
I'd like to add in, we had a client whose business was a victim of ransomware, and it was completely devastating that they were attacked in that way. And I'd like you to go into what if this happens to you, and what do you guys suggest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the big ways that you can avoid this altogether is by backing up your files in a secondary location. What I mean by that is there's a service now called, or a technology now called the cloud. And there's a lot of services that offer that. So Apple has their own iCloud service. Google has their own iCloud service through Google Drive. And that allows you to store your files and your family pictures and all your memories in a second location. So what will happen because of that is if a hacker does take over your account or takes over your computer, you have those files somewhere else. So you don't fall to the holder of your files, which is the cyber criminal at that point. Another big thing that we ask clients and advisors both is just to not pay. Like Tim mentioned, that fuels that terrorism aspect of it, and they're just going to keep doing this to unsuspecting individuals. Another big item that I think needs to be highlighted too is just you utilize those services such as Best Buy or the Genius Bar at Apple. They're really good, and they're trained highly when it comes to these types of attacks. And if your Mac or your Windows device ever comes infected, just take it to Apple or Best Buy and say, hey, this is my problem. I got hit with a ransomware attack. What can I do to save my files, and go from there? And they'll be able to either clean the device or look for an alternative to get your files back.
Yeah, and if I may add two pieces of advice, especially for the business owners. The FBI would consider any payment likely an anti-money laundering issue. So you might want to be a little bit cautious if you were to decide to pay in a business setting. And then for those folks who aren't as comfortable with a cloud service, I'll tell a humbling story. Is my mother plugs in one of those external drives every Friday. So all her pictures, all her files, they live on an external drive. It's not the most fancy or technologically savvy way to do it, but if her computer was to become infected, everything is backed up, about 3 feet away on a shelf. And at that point, it just becomes more of an inconvenience rather than a real damaging event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'll add to that as well. That takes place in the cloud service that I spoke on earlier. So if you are uncomfortable or if you don't know about cloud, the USB thumbstick that you can plug into your computer is a great alternative for it.
Do we have any other questions on this topic on the line? Okay.
I think we're good. I think that's very good information and good advice that hopefully people can avoid.
I have a question, Loreen.
Yes, please do.
Okay, so what if what if some friends tell you that they received emails from you that you did not send?
Yeah, that's a very popular one. That's a little bit into the future, so I'll back that up. If someone is sending emails on your behalf, one could assume someone has access to your email account, right? Be it maybe it's your email account or your Facebook or another, right, Instagram. My wife, her Instagram recently has been doing that, trying to sell sunglasses of all things. So the first step would be you can report it via your Google email or your Facebook or your Instagram, whatever it may be. Report that something suspicious is going on. The second thing you're going to want to do, if you haven't already, is change your password. If it's still happening, change it again. If your password is soccer123, I wouldn't change it to soccer124, maybe something drastically different. And then the final thing, Grayson's going to touch on it a little bit for financial accounts, but this works for everything. If you have the ability to turn on the two-factor or that multi-factor service, do so. And that is the text to your phone. And I'll share a story. I purchased my grandmother an iPad. She lives in Connecticut. I live in Charlotte. I purchased my grandmother an iPad so we can video conference. And within a week, she had received some fake emails, very similar to what you were talking about. And the saving grace was we had enabled that two-factor setting. And it popped up on her iPad and said, Maria, are you trying to log in from Shanghai, China? And that's a very obvious no. And it would work very similar on your Facebook or Instagram or email. You're going to want to turn on that service. So whenever you're somewhere a little bit unusual or somewhere that might be a new device, it's going to prompt you for a text to your phone, and you'll enter a code and it'll let you in. No matter where you are in the world or what your password is, if someone was to gain access to that account, they would need your phone in their hand to get that extra level of security. And that should be able to, one, eradicate everything, but two, prevent you from having that problem moving forward.
To ask you a question,
Does that make sense?
Tim. So
Sure.
it seems as though everyone is moving towards that two-factor authentication. And I guess the question is, how much additional security does that give? Is that pretty much impenetrable in a sense, or, you know, how much more security does that add? And a secondary question to that is, when will it be that everything that we do has that two-factor authentication?
Sure. To answer your initial question, it's by no means impenetrable. Remember our first gradient of hackers to nation states. Frankly, if a country, a military is trying to access your account, they will, no matter what. There's nothing we can do, unfortunately. But for your run-of-the-mill, right, the military, the governments are not accessing your Instagram or your Facebook. For your run-of-the-mill scammers or bad guys, it's impenetrable. It's going to be impossible. It really is the saving grace of having the device in your hands. Now, if in theory a bad guy was to have your device, they broke in your house, that's a different story. But 99.9% of the time, that's the case. And I think you'll see that it's certainly permeating more. And you'll see that as a standard very soon. I think of how we interact with our iPhones every day, right? If you have an iPhone, you used to thumb your way in. Now you have your face. Once you get into the phone, if you go to Bank of America or if you go to another, popular app, you can face in one more time. You can put in your code. There are several different layers that you can use. And that's where the industry is going to go. If you really want to take that next step, it would be even beyond that, solely relying on your biometrics, right? The Face ID is really excellent. A bad guy is not going to have your Face ID on them or your thumbprint. But unfortunately for now, those are still tied to a password, right? When you go to set up those services, you still have to have a code or a password. And that's why that second layer is very important. When I was in those military factories, the spacesuit and the helicopter, on our badges, we carried around a token. And if any of you have worked in a tech company, you may have seen it. And it would change every 30 seconds, a 6-digit code. It's a little bit more advanced now. You don't have to carry it around on your keychain. Grayson and I actually, to log in today, had to call in and then log into a special code on our phone. And that code, it's an app, but it also changes every 60 seconds. So your most critical information, your most important profiles, if you will, should all be behind those services if possible.
So does it mean that if you want to use an ear to do a two-factor authentication or authorization, whatever it is, on your email address, that you have to have your phone with you every time you are anywhere that you want to go into your email?
Yeah, that would unfortunately be the limiting factor, right? The pro and con. The pro is a hacker is never going to have your cell phone.
Right.
The con would be you have to have your phone on you or be near your phone, right? It can send a code to your phone. It could call your phone. Many of them, I'm sure you've seen, have an option to send a code to your email. But if you're inherently worried about your email, that might not be the best place to send that
Right.
code.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Any other questions on that topic?
I think that's good.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate the dialogue. It's a lot more fun when it's interactive. So Grayson, go ahead. I think we touched on it a little bit already, but in terms of tech scammers, this is no different than someone ruining your dinner 15 years ago and calling up and trying to sell you something, but now it just happens to be on your computer.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. So tech support scams are when a large or a cyber criminal tend to be Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and they'll try to trick unconvincing individuals to mail them their actual device. And by mailing them the device in the process, they end up taking all the information, the data that's on that device. So think about all your family memories or all that data that you have on your laptop. If you were to send it to this random address, they will take all that data and then give it back to you in an unconvincing shroud, and it will seem as if nothing happened, but they have all your data in the process. How this occurs is oftentimes they'll have emails. So again, those phishing emails that we see a lot, or even pop-up chats from strangers, either through your computer, or maybe it's just a nasty website that you didn't mean to click on. They'll try to trick you saying, we'll clean it for $250. And you're saying, oh, well, if my computer's infected, they're obviously telling the truth. Maybe I should go do it. And that's not the case. So they'll often trick you into a hotline where you call and you mail your laptop, and then that whole process begins of them taking the data, and then they'll give it back to you, and you unknowingly have all your data gone and wiped off. Another big way that we see with clients and advisors too is through client impersonation. I on a little bit earlier, but what happens is cyber criminals will break into an email inbox, and they'll start combing through all the previous conversations that user had with all kinds of people in the world. So family members, maybe financial advisors, any kind of contacts, and oftentimes they'll find that conversation between the financial advisor and themselves, and they'll pretend to be that client. So if you have Joe Smith, they'll pretend to be that client, and they'll say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, I want $100,000, but I want it transferred to this account. And when I mean this account, that's this new cyber criminal account. This is this new bank account. So your financial advisor is trained routinely to identify and know these scams very easily. So they may ask for additional controls or security measures to make sure that the identity is who they say they are. So if you get a call,
let me just add in here that we reach out to you and talk to you on the phone whenever there is a request. We cannot take email requests for this very reason. We don't know that it's you. And in fact, we've had multiple client accounts that have been hacked where we have gotten these kinds of emails requesting us for account balances, for money to be transferred. We never act on any of that. We will pick up the phone and talk to you on the phone, so we know that it's really you. We also know, this is the importance of working with a financial advisor who knows you and your family. We know your habits. We know if something is unusual, like the example, if somebody's emailing us and asking us for $100,000, first of all, we're never going to take an email request, but we also know if that's unusual. So just wanted to corroborate that is, we have our security measures in place to make sure that it is you asking for the money.
Yep,
yeah,
that's a great point.
Yeah, and I'll add, my wife and I are actually clients as well, not of Loreen, but of a local LPL advisor, a peer of Loreen's. And at first it was a little frustrating for us, right? We were closing on a home. We needed the wire transfer. We had a new account to open. We were trying to take advantage of a dip in the market. And every time we're a little frustrated saying, wow, every time we're getting a phone call, we're busy. But I have to eat my own food, if you will, right? And it's really for our protection. I remember the day the wire went through, sure enough, someone was trying to call the same attorney. You really want to make sure, and I think Loreen said great, never take an order over the phone. Always call and confirm who it is. And that's the benefit of having someone local, someone that you know and trust. They're going to know your habits. They're going to know your voice. They're going to know your pattern and your expectations. And ultimately, that validation is really for the best and something we really ask all of our advisors to understand, and same with the clients as well.
So now I'm going to hand it over to Tom to take over COVID scams. Yep, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, sure. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the new scams. And to be honest, these aren't as prevalent as the first four, but they're certainly the most recent. And I think they've kicked up recently. And the first is going to be the COVID scams, right? As you could all imagine. Grayson and I were unfortunately very, very busy over the last couple months. Anytime there's an incident in the world, you're going to have really nasty people try to take advantage of it. And we've seen an uptick of attempted fraud. We've seen an uptick in cyber criminals. We've seen an uptick of advisors having nasty situations to deal with all through the COVID fraud. So be on the lookout. Just understand most of the time it's going to be a scam right now. Pick up the number. If you're looking to donate to a fund, go outside of any pop-up or any email and find their contact information. Really understand who you're donating to, who's on the other side of that email. And the second one is the census scams. This one doesn't really ever come up, right, every 10 years. And we've seen quite a bit of uptick in this, where people are using the census, not so much the mail and the envelopes in the mail, but sending fraudulent emails, trying to call and gather census-like information to, move forward and steal financial information and to try to steal funds. And finally are the Zoom scams. Not so much scams, more inappropriate, to be honest. There's not a lot of data or theft going on in a Zoom scam, but it's going to be more of an inconvenience or inappropriate actions. And when you have a Zoom, if you're hosting one for your own business or a WebEx like this, make sure you have a password. You all had to have the dial-in when you joined today. April sent it to a very limited subset of people. And there's also a feature where you can act as a bouncer or a doorman, if you will, and let certain individuals in and kick certain individuals out. I'm more than happy to walk through that in more detail if you're going to be hosting some Zoom meetings, in the days to come. But these are just two things that have been popping up recently and something you might want to be mindful of.
Tim, I'd like to ask you a question about the census scam. So,
Sure.
Clearly that is, government census. They want everybody to respond. And so, I've already filled mine out. Many people have already filled theirs out. So where is it that the scam is actually, so if you get it, in other words, we all got it in the mail. So if you get an email, can you just assume that any email that says census is a scam? At what point do you know it's really the government versus not?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty functionally sound thought, Loreen. Any email, I don't think any of us are signing up for the federal government's email list, right? It's not somewhere we shop. It's not somewhere we do business all the time. So that's a fair statement. Any email is likely going to be census scams. Now, maybe you work with a local charity or someone who is involved in the government who's interested in the census, but outside of some small use cases, this is going to be a scam. Any pop-up that you might see is going to be a scam. I think you said it really well, Loreen. Outside of the the physical piece of mail where you either fill it out or type in the code, anything else is going to be a scam. And I think it just speaks to having an understanding of what the census is, what they're trying to get at. Unfortunately, the targets of scams a lot of the times have never filled one out before or aren't, aware of what they might be. Very similar to tax fraud. You see the tax scams in the spring. You might have a tax professional, you might do it yourself, but for some people, it's their first time or they're unfamiliar and it's a little bit easier of a target. But I agree 100%. Anything you're going to see is likely a scam in this space. Any other questions on this topic? Great, we'll move along here. Go ahead, Grayson, share a little bit of tips around passwords.
Yeah, so up until this point, we're talking about how to play a good defense. How can you be aware of all the kinds of attacks that are coming to you in your safe bubble? But I also want to talk about how you can be proactive and how you can take the right approach to put these controls and these safety measures in place to ensure that you're as safe as you can possibly be. The first one that I want to talk about today is protecting with passwords. And those are the keys to the kingdom. So wherever you have the option to use a password for any online account, I do recommend it highly. Just to go into a little bit of detail, the 4 main areas that I strongly encourage passwords would be the email inboxes. Social media is a big one as well. Any kind of banking or financial applications, and then e-commerce, so Amazon, eBay, those shopping websites. A lot of questions I get from advisors and clients alike is, can I write down passwords? You can, while we don't highly recommend it, if you do choose to write down your passwords, we just ask that you lock it away in a safe or even a vault when not in use. Alternatively, you can use these things called password managers, which are almost like digital journals. It uses next-gen protections and technologies to make sure that no hackers can get into it. And LastPass or KeepPass are great options that you can use. What it will do is it will generate computer-generated passwords, and you'll never have to remember a password again. All you have to do is just put in your username, and it has a little icon next to the password bubble, and you just hit that button, and it'll autofill your password for you. If you do create your own password, we mentioned a few steps that we think would make it super strong and super unique so that it doesn't get cracked easily. So the first step would just be to start with a phrase you know. Phrases and sentences are much harder to crack than a simple word such as pineapple or soccer. So here we start with I love California. Then we want to make it unique. So we don't want to make it just lowercase or all uppercase. We want to use some words or some letters and characters that aren't common in the dictionary. So we use numbers, values, and symbols to replace some of those lowercase letters, which will make it more complicated and harder to guess. Some additional tips we want to use as well is don't use the same password across multiple sites. I have a bad habit of doing this myself. But that's where password managers come into play, where you can just use that password manager and it'll autofill it so you never have to worry about it. Because if a cybercriminal is able to guess one password in one location, they're going to try to guess it in a lot of locations with that same username.
So I have a question here. So, we use Wealth Vision with our clients to aggregate their assets, so it makes it simpler for them to see everything in one place. But now, a couple things with that. Now, more and more, they're going to two-step authentication, which then can break that link with Wealth Vision. And the other thing is, if somebody uses the LastPass and it just creates it for them, then when they're trying to set it up on Wealth Vision, they're not going to know what that is. You guys have any comments on kind of helping manage Wealth Vision along with this additional security?
Yeah, I can take that. And I think I'm a little bit uniquely qualified to talk about it because my wife and I also use Wealth Vision with our LPL advisor to manage all of our accounts as well. I would say, look, the password on the screen is a best practice, but it might not be totally practical, to be honest, right? It's difficult. And that's why the password service like this, Loreen, is really valuable because what we're going to do is create a strong password, one that you'll remember, and you don't have to have it auto-generate, right? It's a best practice, but you don't have to. And you could just keep your password to Wealth Vision, your password to Amazon, your password to your email. It all lives in this vault. So if you were to go to Wealth Vision and sign in, all you have to do, it's actually a really nice functionality. I'll give them credit, and it's totally free for end consumers. If you can see my mouse, you're just going to highlight this ellipsis. When you download the tool, this ellipsis is sort of the magical gateway, and it's going to populate that for you. So you wouldn't have to remember your Wealth Vision password or really any password. You're just going to highlight the ellipsis. It's going to auto-populate, and you're going to be able to access your account in Wealth Vision. And this is actually nice, too, when you go to set up Wealth Vision for the first time. You don't have to think, okay, my Bank of America password is this, my Wells Fargo username is that, my, Discover card is that. You can actually just auto-populate each one. And it'll one, generate really quickly, and two, when you go to change it, all those changes will flow as well. That help?
I've got another question.
Sure.
What about if you've made up a list of, your usernames and your passwords? What about storing it in Dropbox?
Yeah, that's not a terrible idea, to be honest. It's a good idea, but I'll share a little bit of a downfall.
Okay.
If your Dropbox account was to be taken, then they've got everything, right? And that's not to say that'll happen to Dropbox. Dropbox is a great company. Lots of people use them. LastPass just is a little bit stronger and has a little bit more of a guarantee because that's their core business, right? It's a very similar idea. Instead of logging into LastPass, logging into Dropbox, finding the paperwork, and copying, you would put all of that in this LastPass tool. It's a little more intuitive. And then you just auto-populate. It's a nice one click, as opposed to having to go into Dropbox, find it, and write it down. But very similar thought process.
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe for you and I, right, end consumers, it's completely free. And there's also a family version. I think it's only $4 or $5 a month. And you can manage all of your children's passwords or of your parents' passwords, or pick a fiduciary or someone you care about. You can manage their passwords on their behalf as well, which is a nice service. And while we're still on passwords, I'll share a little bit. I just don't want to take anyone off guard. But when you register your email and email address and your password with LPL to access any of the LPL tools or receive notifications from us, we actually have a dark web monitoring tool. I don't believe it's happened with any of Loreen's clients, but on a weekly basis, we get a report of all of the clients, like any of you on the phone, whose emails or passwords are on the dark web. It's a really nice service, actually, and what we'll do is reach out to Loreen, for example, and say, hey, Loreen, one of your clients' passwords or email addresses has been found on the dark web. You're going to want to ask them to change it immediately, and then as the advisor, just be mindful if anything suspicious is coming up. So we've had a lot of success with that recently. Actually had a couple really prominent clients that you or I might know who have had their passwords or emails pop up on the dark web, likely because they're a little bit more prominent, and able to help them change it before anything bad was to happen. And very shortly, Grayson's actually leading the project, is we're going to do the same thing for Loreen and for April and for Annie. If their email addresses or passwords that they use to do business with LPL are found on the dark web, we're going to reach out and let them know too. Totally free. Hopefully it's never going to happen to you, but it's not going to be your fault. It's certainly not Loreen's fault. It's oftentimes Yahoo, LinkedIn, or some of the more recent Equifax was another one where your email address might be shared. But that proactive reach out is something we've started, and people seem to like it. So we're pretty happy, and hopefully you never have to deal with it, but it'll be Grayson or I on the other line if you have questions on that.
That's a great value-added service, and we very much appreciate LPL paying what I'm sure you have to pay, quite a bit in order to have access to that information, and also keeping us informed. And thankfully, we have not had anybody on the dark web yet, but it's good to know that if that does happen, that you'll be notifying us.
I've got another
Absolutely.
quick question, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so if your email is found on the dark web and you go change the password on that, they really can't do anything with it, right? I mean, I could probably guess a lot of people who use like Gmail, what their email address is usually their name, you know? So I mean, if they just have your email address, what harm is that if they don't have your password?
You're 100% right. And we're going to do a live demo. I'm really glad it worked. There's a website, has absolutely nothing to do with LPL, has nothing to do with Loreen. The gentleman behind this website is called Have I Been Pwned. He's a researcher, right? People research chemistry, people research viruses, some people research computers. And this gentleman has this site called Have I Been Pwned. You can search your email address or you can search for passwords. So I'll put in my mother's email live here on the screen. Nobody email her, please. And you'll see, to no fault of my mother, she's had a couple people find her email on the dark web, right? It looks as though whoever anti-public combo list was, Exactus is a marketing firm, LinkedIn, Under Armour. So there's quite a few individuals responsible for losing my mother's email address. And you're 100% right. It's not necessarily a problem. It's not your fault. But you want to make sure the password associated with that isn't breached. So if we click on the password link, just in full disclosure, I'm going to type password 123, and it's going to be quite a bit, right? 123,000 times has password 123 been found on the dark web. So if that was your password affiliated with that email, that's bad. Now I'm going to put in my password, right? Hopefully nothing will come up. And it's going to say good news, right? So the password that I use to log into my computer hasn't been breached. So this is totally free. Again, absolutely unaffiliated with LPL, unaffiliated with Loreen, but it's something that we like to share with all clients and advisors to test it out, give it a shot, see what you can find. And if you do find your password or a loved one's email or password, it's always good to let them know.
That's why we also encourage password managers as well, is because they can generate those computer-generated passwords. And to no fault of your own, by just sheer coincidence, a lot of those dictionary passwords have already been hit. So password 123, soccer 123, these general passwords that a lot of individuals use is often getting hit already in some previous data breach, just by sheer coincidence.
So are you saying that you can go into this Have I Been Pwned website and then just put any email address for any password that you want to check out, and nobody's going to get it from that site?
Absolutely. So we can, this is not the site we use, right? As Loreen said, we have our own tools and corporate things, but we won't do yours here live, but we'll try this. We'll do grayson.wellington@lpl.com. Grayson, fingers crossed. Oh, see, even Grayson's email has been found before. Canva, right? So the marketing tool to make nice pictures and graphics. But now the bad thing would be if we put in Grayson's password and it would have been found. So you can do any email, work, public, private, any email you so choose. Almost every email is going to be on here, frankly. Quite a few of them are going to be. Think of if most people have a LinkedIn, most people have some affiliation with Yahoo, most people have some affiliation, have been to an Under Armour store or a Nike store. Joanne Fabrics was another one. So there's a lot of emails on here. The password is going to be the more critical piece of it. And if you find your password, and again, if it's soccer123, it's going to be found. But if you truly have a unique password that you don't think anyone should have and it's on here, you're going to want to change it right away.
No, there's no limit to how many passwords you can try out or anything. I don't care.
Nope. In fact, last year at our annual conference called Focus, we have about 5,000 of Loreen and her peers, and we had this up at several booths. Hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people put it in. No problems at all. It's a totally free service.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Grayson, go ahead. I think we talked a little bit about MFA, but good overview here.
Yep. So just like we mentioned earlier, it's a great safety net that you can take in lieu with your password as well. So just like that image below represents, what will happen is whenever you do log into an account on your laptop, you just simply plug in your username and password, you hit log in, and then you'll receive a text or even a phone call on your phone that you already set up. And it will say, hey, is this you? Yes or no? You click yes, and then you're granted access to your device. This helps out a lot with geographical hacking. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're in California, and like Tim's example said, it said, hey, are you in rural China? You can instantly say no, and multi-factor authentication will be able to identify those kinds of hackings that happen overseas. This can happen through text and phone. They also have they sometimes have keychains and stuff that you can put on your keys. So it's not just text messages that you can use, but text messaging is often the most popular format. And then social media. So almost everyone I know has some form of social media, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. And there's typically 5 simple steps that I want to walk with you today about being safe when it comes to social media. So the first one is there's no delete button on the internet. I mean, what I mean by that is oftentimes people will post thinking they can just delete it 30 minutes later or an hour later if they don't agree with their opinions or if they are getting some flack. And while it is true that you do delete it right then and there, oftentimes we see celebrities' reputations crushed because people are just taking screenshots and people just don't forget the post or the tweet that individual let out an hour or 30 minutes before. Number 2, broadcast your location. So Facebook is very popular with this, where they want you to broadcast your location several times a day. We encourage you not to do this because it often gives cyber criminals ammo that they can use against you. So if you're going to the store, if you're going to the supermarket, and it says, hey, do you want to share your location saying you're going to the supermarket? That gives cyber criminals information to know, hey, you're not at home and that they can break into your house and steal your stuff. Number 3 is connect only with people you trust. So Tim will talk about cyber safety for children as well in a second, but this applies to adults as well. So oftentimes people would try to friend you or try to add who you are. They're just trying to get their follower count up or for whatever reason try to add you. And I encourage people to only connect with people that you trust and keep that social circle small in a virtual setting. Flip your account settings to private. So like Instagram and Facebook, you can control how much information is put onto the World Wide Web. And by limiting how much information you're putting out on the internet, public eye, that limits the risk that can be involved with people knowing where your whereabouts or what you might be doing at a certain given time. And then the 5th thing is turn on MFA. So like what we just talked about before, multi-factor authentication is that safety net for passwords, but it will require a manual input on your end to turn on the MFA option. This can be done through your security settings, and I strongly encourage you to do it on social media, because social media, like Tim's wife, gets hit all the time where accounts are scammed out and passwords are lost because MFA was not turned on.
Yeah, thanks, Grayson. One of the last things we'll talk about here today is just staying safe with mobile devices. The first of which is to use a strong password. And that's not to say it's a password like you would use for a bank account, but make sure you have the code on your phone, especially now that most phones are offering a thumbprint or a face view. Make sure you have a password on that phone. We've seen quite the uptick of physical theft of a device, right? Not so much the last couple months, but prior to that, physical theft and accessing accounts or apps or funds on the phone because there was no password or no code to get in. The second one is keeping the software up to date. It can be annoying. You see that little red button pop up that has a 1 next to it. Those are important. Every month, Microsoft is going to roll this out. Apple is usually every 2 to 3 months where they're going to roll out an update. There's functionality and nice to have, but there's also security features in there too. Grayson just talked about social media. Know what apps you're downloading. It seems a little bit silly, but the Apple Store and the Android market and all those places you can get apps, there's bad apps in there too. Just like you would look at a hotel review before staying at a hotel or looking at a restaurant review before dining in a restaurant, look at the app review. Make sure it really is the one you're trying to get and it's got thousands of downloads and a high score. Some of those that are impersonating are going to find you into a little bit of trouble. And then when you're out in public and if you don't need to be on the Wi-Fi or don't need to be connected to Bluetooth or an AirDrop, if you will, just disconnect, right? Especially if you're traveling. Don't connect to random Wi-Fi hotspots or random options that you're not familiar with. That's not to say everything's going to be bad, but if it doesn't require a password to get in, there can be some bad things on those as well.
Tim, I have a question about that app.
Sure thing. Go ahead.
Let's say just the simple thing like a flashlight app. How do you know that it is a safe app? I mean, like you said, maybe thousands of people, it's free, but it's especially like all these free apps. How do we know they're okay?
Sure. I think that one's a great question, but actually a pretty simple answer, and there's safety in numbers. There's only so many there's a lot of flashlight apps, but there's only so many, right? Once you hit the second or third, just pick a flashlight app. I wouldn't go scrolling past the 2 or 3 heavy hitters, the blue chip flashlights, if you will, because those are the ones that are tried and true, and they're going to work. They are secure and robust. Once you start getting down a couple pages, and it doesn't have to be a flashlight, right? Once you start getting down from the first 1 or 2, you're going to want to really be careful. It's probably not worth downloading anything after that. And just something to say there too. You talk about Wealth Vision, LPL. If you have any financial apps, all of those firms are frequently looking on the Apple Store to make sure that there's no imposters, and there are sometimes, frankly. I think 1 or 2 since I've started. They're up for a couple hours. They get caught by the tools, but people are always trying to scam us, really at every turn. And we'll end today on keeping your children safe. And actually, this can go with elderly parents too. Very similar lack of knowledge with technology, to be honest. And you're going to want to make sure that your children, your family members aren't giving out personal information. From your children, it's more of wanting to be friends or make friends online. For parents, unfortunately, a lot of the times it's what we call romance scams. It's really been a big thing, actually, is having folks feel like they're making a connection online. They might have a new pen pal or a new friend, and they're in a little bit of a tough time. They need a little bit of money. We've really seen an uptick of that. So you're going to want to be mindful of those romance scams. Or for children, right, not going to be romance, but understand who they're talking to, just like you're not going to talk to strangers in real life. Where you can, use your parental settings, block websites, set time limits. YouTube has a children's app, right? Disney has a children's app. Anywhere where there's a children's version, you're going to want to turn that on. And then sometimes it's having a tough discussion, understanding, unfortunately, sometimes they are the cyberbully, and sometimes they're the one being bullied. Make sure they know what's appropriate and what's not online. In terms of some other tips, don't let children just go off and make their own accounts. An old boss of mine, he would have a pop quiz, if you will. Random day, he would say, "Give me your phone," and it was part of the rules of the house. Thursday at 7:52 p.m., the kids had to give dad the phone. And if he saw an app that he didn't like or something, a contact that he wasn't familiar with, he would question it. Along those lines, see what photos are going on there. If your child has an Instagram or a Facebook, they're going to really not want to be friends with mom, but be their friend. Make sure you understand what's going on there. It can be a slippery slope. We talked a little bit about passwords. That goes just, without saying. And then friend requests from strangers. Just like Grayson said earlier, there's no reason to accept from someone that you're not sure who they are. There's really going to be limited upside there. Outside of LinkedIn, where you might have a couple, friends in common, you're really going to want to be careful, especially in your personal social media and with children who they're friending online. I think that's all the content we have today, but we'll stop. We're here all night for questions or concerns if anyone has them.
Well, we so appreciate you guys and recognize that you're 3 hours later than we are, which we really appreciate you being on this call. And we'll open it up. If anybody on the line has any additional questions, please unmute yourself and let's get a few more questions before we close out the meeting.
I'd like to ask a question. So I have on my computer something that automatically populates when I sign into my accounts, and it says, do you want to save this password through Google for when you sign on in the future? And I always click yes, not really thinking about it because I trust Google. Is that something safe to do as kind of like a password manager, or is that something I should avoid?
Sure. I think in your personal life, that's a good idea. It's not quite as good as the specific tools like LastPass, but look, everyone saves it in Google. It's not a bad tool. It's going to work really well. I auto-populate personally my credit card in Google a lot, so you don't have to fill it in every time. In the office is something that you're going to want to stay away from. I know that Loreen, you and Andy and your team doesn't. It's a FINRA and an SEC issue. So if you're in a personal setting, Google is going to be great. If you're at work, so my wife works in accounting, she does not do that at work. If you work in financials, you're not going to want to do that at work. A lot of the times your firm might have rules, or your governing bodies may have rules, but Google is great for personal life. It seems like they have a lot of integrations and control a lot now, so it can certainly be an ease of doing, ease of working for sure.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and I only use it on my personal laptop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a nice tool. I know for LPL and anyone affiliated really with securities, they're pretty stringent on that to make sure scammers don't come in. So always a good thing to keep in mind in the office, but at home, not a big deal at all.
And I just want to add one more thing too, is if you're very scared about putting your credit card information online and having it auto-populate, you can also use multi-factor authentication for that password manager too. This works for LastPass and Google Pass. There's an option where you just turn on to your settings if you are worried about putting your information online that way.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Great. Any other questions before we close out our webinar? We do have another one this next week. And Amy, I forget the title of the one that we have next week. Do you have the title?
I will look really quick. April might be listening to my
Yeah, it's Linda Duffy, who's going to be speaking on, I believe, what employers need to know in the COVID environment and going back to work. But we'll be sending out that announcement, and we appreciate everybody participating. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Grayson, for this great presentation. Like I said, we recorded it. It'll be on our website with all the other ones, and we look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Bye, thank you.